Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be at the Colosseum at the peak of Roman power? To see men torn apart for the amusement of the crowd? Well, wonder no longer, as in this recently released BBC interview, Elon Musk goes on to ritualistically dismember a BBC reporter. All for your amusement. And best of all, there's no blood, so you won't even have to worry about feeling queasy, although there is plenty of violence. And speaking of violence, I apologise in advance for any of the disturbed audio, as the BBC elected to apparently not bother running an audio check before the interview, as the audio is at times terrible. Here, let me give you a quick teaser to demonstrate. Just be glad that I, unlike the BBC, reduced the volume of that. Damn, it blew my ears off. Anywho, let us start with the best bit, where the BBC reporter tries to assert that Twitter has seen a drastic increase in hateful content after Elon took over. As apparently our dear BBC reporter's feed here is just full of hate speech. Racism, sexism, misogyny, whatever you have it, it's everywhere. And so Elon asked him, okay, well that's a concern. Could you tell me about it? No. As the reporter cannot even actually define what hate speech is, and he apparently isn't even for banning it. Hell, it's kind of a long clip, but it is so worth it, so here, enjoy.
Used to be in content moderation, and we've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that something that you want to address?
What hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
but just a personal anecdote, like what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content, yeah, personally. But I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
You see more hate speech personally?
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
I'm
not saying anything. I'm saying.
I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content. And I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I don't.
You can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But
and actually, a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at my following.
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and
how did you see that hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give us a single one.
And I'm saying
then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet, and yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's false.
No, what I claimed.
You just lied.
What I claimed was there are many organisations that say that that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not, I mean, right, and
literally
you can look at something like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK. They will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know this hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on.
All right, So our intrepid investigative reporter here cannot name a single example, because he doesn't use the feed function. The feed where he sees more hateful content than ever, on a feed that he doesn't use, but other people are totally using it, and they, you see, are telling him that they are seeing way more of it. The man has no clue. He's a pre-programmed NPC, literally repeating the data points that he has been programmed with. He doesn't have any of this firsthand. He can't bring up an example. It hasn't happened to him, but he read somewhere that it happened to somebody else. Wow, indeed. And this isn't the first or only time that we get to see this either, where our little NPC here is talking about something that somebody else has apparently experienced and that he has been apparently told about. He also asks Elon about the Twitter outages, and that apparently the BBC had been told by an engineer that everything was on fire over at Twitter. The plumbing was being shaken loose and the building itself was moments away from collapse. And yet, well, Twitter is working fine. I can use it right now. I've been able to use it more or less uninterrupted since he started. There has been a couple of outages I have heard, but I haven't personally experienced it. Granted, my Twitter usage is hardly the most frequent either, mind you, but clearly, it ain't on fire. And this is after Twitter fired a huge number of employees. At one point, I think he mentions that there were over 8,000 employees at Twitter, using 3 data centers. Now there's only 1,502 data centers, yet Twitter is still running pretty much as it always had, and with more features than before. As Twitter, of course, now also has a video sharing feature and a subscription function that was hammered out in months. I am hardly one to simp for enormous corporations, but unironically, Twitter appears to be doing more with less. And again, as he will repeat in the interview here, the BBC's information on this is coming from engineers. Even people who apparently never worked at Twitter, but people who are simply telling them that, oh yeah, no, this couldn't possibly work. Don't believe your lying eyes, I suppose. As, well, Elon points out, he's on Twitter right then and there. In fact, he's streaming the interview to Twitter Spaces. God, imagine, you're sitting there like, so Twitter doesn't work, and like, well, I'm streaming it to Twitter right now. Christ. And the pounding doesn't stop there either. Having been shut down on hate speech and Twitter's offices apparently being on fire at the time of recording, he tries with misinformation, because surely that has got to work, right? There are less moderators than ever, so there's got to be loads of misinformation all over the place, right? Well, Elon's sick of playing defense at this point, and so he plays the reversal card.
Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, so. You thought it wasn't?
I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces. I am not a representative of the BBC's editorial policy. I want to make that clear. Let's talk about something else. If you want to talk about the BBC, all right. Let's talk about something else.
You weren't expecting that.
Let's talk about something else.
Oh, this is not an interview about the BBC. It should be illegal to publicly fuck a man this hard. Please, someone slap an R18 label on this. I love it. There is even, at the end of the segment, Elon tries to get the BBC reporter, the BBC employee, to say at least that he likes the BBC, because he was like, oh yeah, no, I actually kind of respect the BBC, don't you? And the BBC reporter refuses to engage with the question, Do you like the BBC?
Do you like the BBC? Do you like BBC?
Okay, yeah, we're not gonna do this.
Oh, I can't interview you.
Obviously, I work for the BBC.
But if you like, do you like BBC?
I know. I see what you're doing. I'm not going to respond to that. Okay, I think we can finish the interview there. If you want to continue, thank you.
Oh God, that really should get you thinking. It's like, okay, you are paying this man probably far too much considering his skills on display here. He doesn't even like your company. He doesn't think you're doing anything worthwhile. He in fact refuses to even comment on it. God damn it. Even as the BBC tries so hard to run defense for you, James Clayton. How could you say this? So, realizing that they have really stepped on it here, the BBC released a whole swath of articles trying to spin this in some sort of a mildly positive light. The interviewer himself pens an article, a very short one, where he doesn't mention the reaming he was receiving. The best part is, normally, after you've gotten your ass kicked in a debate or something, you'll, like, hours later, you'll think about, like, oh, goddammit, I should have said that. I had the argument. He doesn't even do that. He doesn't even present a way to try and squeak himself clear of the rubble currently burying him. He simply just pretty much tucks his tails between his legs and goes, that Elon, he's like a crazy person, right? Like, he made his dog CEO, like, oh, he... Like, yeah, he was joking with you. Like, he's literally laughing as he says this, and the BBC like, whoa, he's clearly insane or something. Damn idiots. There was even a point in this article where he's going like, I was kind of expecting Elon to just leave and stop violating me, but he just wouldn't. Oh, that's awful. I almost feel bad for this guy. Almost, not quite. And they try to claim one little itsy-bitty victory as well by saying that Elon Musk, Twitter owner, changes the BBC account's government-funded label, as if they made him do this. He begins the interview by saying that the change is already in the works before the interview because he is trying to be as accurate as possible. And honestly, currently, the BBC was marked as a government-funded media organisation, which is correct in my opinion. But the BBC's argument is that they're government-funded, but they are independent, and they gain their money via the licence fees, which is of course claimed by the government. You don't have a choice. It's like saying that the government taxes you, but they're not actually funded by your taxes. It's public funding, okay? It's basically crowdfunding, just a pinch less voluntary. Alrighty then, but technically that too is correct. If I was to be petulant, I'd probably name them government and publicly funded news media. There are a couple of interesting little mentions here and there as well. For example, they speak briefly about the Trumpolophagus, Elon simply saying that he doesn't necessarily care if Trump gets back on the platform. He does, probably, because it would probably be a pretty major boost to engagement. But he unbanned Trump because Twitter is supposed to be the town square, and so everyone, even Trump, is welcome. He also talks about that at the time when he actually took over, Twitter was about 4 months away from bankruptcy. Like, they would just be out of money. And judging by the amount of money they were spending and the amount of money they were getting in, Twitter had probably been on the verge of that bankruptcy for a very, very long time. Presumably, the company has simply been kept afloat by consistent new investments and donations and additives by certain other organizations. He also speaks briefly on TikTok, saying that he, generally speaking, is not for banning things, which this is one of the points where I do disagree with the man because, well, TikTok appears to be a Chinese governmental entity. And we know what that means. It's hardly secretive, but, benefit of the doubt, I guess. Elon is more charitable than I am in that regard. And Elon also mentions that he quite enjoyed taking away the official verification badge from the New York Times. Which I can very much so understand. I think most people would probably rather enjoy that, honestly. But man, this was just a terrible interview. This guy came in to interview Elon Musk, one of the hottest interview subjects of the day, doesn't even do basic sound checking, has half of his questions turned back on him with no issues, comes dramatically underprepared to the point where it becomes simply a comedy of errors, refuses to even endorse the organization he works for. And then, at the end of the interview, he's sitting there like, please, can we end already? I'm sick of being roasted. Oh yeah, this man is going to have nightmares of this interview for the rest of his life, and boy, what a roller coaster journey this must have been. He starts the day by firing off a random email to Elon Musk thinking he'll never respond to this. In fact, he literally says this in his article defending himself. And then he gets the word back, sure, how about tonight? And not believing his luck, he rushes off for the chance of a lifetime. And then this is what happens. Man, that's, yep, no, that's a roller coaster, alright, and one that he will not soon forget. Man, talk about heaven to hell on the express train. But right, I would, I don't know if I was about to say I'd recommend checking out the interview in full, because of course this was far from an exhaustive go-through, but from the audio troubles, and a lot of it is just, again, this person is an actual, genuine NPC. Even on the few questions where he has an obvious sort of pseudo-win from his point of view, like when he asks Elon, for example, so, how did you feel about firing all of those employees? Wasn't that dreadfully terrible? Didn't you feel like a bit of a bad person? Couldn't you have done this better? Wasn't it a bit insensitive to fire them all? And Elon's just like, nah, like, the company was 4 months away from death. What would you want me to do? And he's just like, well, I'm not the boss at Twitter. I couldn't possibly answer the question I just asked. Brilliant. They even have a second go at this, but Elon's like, okay, you're not the head of Twitter, but surely you must have a thought. And again, he's just like, no, I don't think. Oof indeed. Oof indeed. Anywho, this poor man has received enough roasting to last him a lifetime at this point, so I'll end my own complicity here. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.